Tonight we're joined by the Daily Caller's Mary Rook, as well as former RNC national spokesperson Elizabeth Pipko. Mary and Liz, welcome, ladies. We have seen so much happen during President Trump's second term in office, and as we're watching, Mary, all of this play out overseas, we've got the president over in Asia scoring all kinds of big wins. One of the first things he did, though, I thought it was so cool. He went to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and he signed the official peace agreement between Thailand and Cambodia. By the way, a war broke out there between Thailand and Cambodia. No one was even paying attention to it, Mary. Donald Trump was. He was actually in Scotland when all of this happened. And I actually remember hearing him on the phone negotiating peace between these two countries. And the way he did it is he leveraged the threat of higher tariffs on the two countries, and he said, listen, you guys got to end this. We got to call it off. They actually signed it. It happened over there. Just to see the strength on the world stage of this president. We've seen him in the Middle East. We've seen him now in Asia. We've seen him meeting with the Japanese emperor, the new prime minister of Japan. Just give me your overall assessment. This is the deal maker and the peacemaker everywhere he goes.
Yeah, I think that we know that he doesn't get enough credit for all the work that he does to secure peace, but then also to secure American strength abroad. We've seen this huge push against globalism, and a lot of people are, especially on the left, are demonizing Trump's tariff policy as if this is going to hurt American consumers. But what they're not realizing, and especially with these deals that he's made in Malaysia and these other countries, we're getting mineral rights that were being held from us from China. This is going to be huge when we talk about our AI boom. This is going to be huge when we talk about making sure that our F-15 still fly. And so what Trump is doing is he's securing American peace and prosperity by fixing all of these issues that these other governments can't seem to get their hands on and fix. And so overall, I think it's great. When you talk about Japan, I think one of the sweetest things that I saw come out of that was that she gave Trump Abe's putter. And, they had such a sweet relationship. And so I can't help but look at that and just go, what do you get the man who has everything's, his passed away best friend's putter? It's such a sweet little moment. And I think that it sparks this conversation about the Asian hemisphere, where you talk about, how are we going to create these allies that can help bolster us against China's aggression? And having a great ally in Japan, having a great ally in Malaysia, having a great ally in Thailand, and all these things help us do that. And, like I said, he just doesn't get enough credit for everything that he does.
Yeah, I mean, this is all, it's just such good stuff. And I love that. I love that he was very close with Shinzo Abe. They if you actually go into that, there's the desk behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office, and my father-in-law has all these pictures on there. It's all pictures of family, right? It's pictures with his parents. It's pictures with our kids and my husband and, the family, except for one picture he has with Shinzo Abe. I think it is so cool. They were very close. He had such a great relationship with him. And to get that putter, I agree with you. I thought that was so great. From the first female prime minister of Japan. Liz, this is just good stuff. It's good for strengthening our relationship with these countries. It's great on the world stage to see the strength that this president exudes, the fact that no matter where he goes, there's just positivity to follow. And I love when he got off the plane in Malaysia, he kicked off his whole thing there by doing the Trump dance, which drove the Democrats nuts, Liz. People were getting all upset over on the Democrat side of the aisle about Donald Trump. He's over there doing the dance while the American people are suffering from the shutdown. That's what Chuck Schumer said. Yeah, it's your fault the government is shut down right now, Chuck. But before we get to the shutdown, Liz, this kind of trip is what we want our president to be doing. He's also talked about the fact that he'd be open to go meet with Kim Jong-un of North Korea once again. This would be the third meeting potentially with this guy who, if you look back to what Barack Obama said during his first term in office, when Donald Trump first came in, he said, Barack Obama told me the biggest problem I would have would be with North Korea. So what did he do? He said, you know what, I'm gonna start making inroads with North Korea. He walked across the DMZ. He shook hands with him during the first term. we could see something like that happen, and it would be to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. Liz, what a great thing for the entire world.
What a great thing that obviously will not be celebrated or applauded by anyone left, because they cringe every time anyone smiles, let alone anytime Donald Trump succeeds. Honestly, anytime we have one of these like international successes, it brings me back to 2016. I remember being on that campaign, and obviously Donald Trump was, labeled as an anti-Semite and a Nazi and everything else. Yeah. But the only like actual, attack that was lobbied against him was like, the world is crashing down around us after Barack Obama, and we need a foreign policy president, and he doesn't have the experience to be that president. And I think back to what we saw in the first term, then obviously 4 years of Joe Biden, who has 40 years of experience in foreign policy and everything else. And then now, when the comparison is so blatant that it makes you think not only about Donald Trump's successes, but also about why the people in our country that have all that experience seem to get it wrong consistently, whether it's Russia, whether it's dealing with China, whether it's the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. It seems that they break it and then Donald Trump fixes it, and they go back and break it again and then talk about how much experience they have. So I hope people are paying attention to what it means to be like a career politician versus an outsider who just wants to make the world a better place.
And it's a great thing that we have a guy in office right now as our president who spent his entire adult time and career building things and making deals and negotiating, because he's doing all of those things right now. He's making deals for this country. He understands how the economy works. He understands how to leverage things in order to accomplish what you want, which is why the tariffs have worked, which is why we see these trade deals happening. For all, like Mary, you brought it up a minute ago, we heard Donald Trump get continually hit by the media and by the left on the tariffs. The tariffs have brought in exorbitant amounts of money to this country. They've also allowed for a lot of these trade agreements, and they're allowing for peace to happen. Both Thailand and Cambodia acknowledge, hey, without the threat of higher tariffs, we may not have seen an end to this war. And now it's a great thing for everybody, but it brings me back to how wrong the Democrats always are. And you wrote a great piece in the Daily Caller where you talk about the fact that the Democrats initially maybe had some success blaming Republicans for the shutdown, because people can look at it and say, oh, the Republicans have the White House, the Republicans have the House, the Republicans have the Senate. This must be the Republicans' fault. But the more people learn, Mary, about what's really going on with this shutdown, about the filibuster, about all of it, the more it actually is hurting the Democrats. And you wrote a great piece in the Daily Caller. Maybe you can kind of tell us why this is now backfiring on the Democrats. They thought that this was going to be great politically for them. I don't know that that's necessarily the case.
Yeah, I think that if you look back, you see the base for the Democrat Party have told them to fight Trump. So they think, we're going to fight him on everything. We're going to push back. If he says we're going left, Democrats are like, no, we're going to go right. And that's where they've set their party line, and that's where they want everybody to follow along with that. But when you look at the polling, you see that the American people, by 61%, and it's super high among Democrats. Republicans are not leading the way in this. Of course, they want the government, to reopen. But 61% of all Americans want this government shutdown to end. And what's going to end up happening, as long as the Democrats continue to pull this along, they're going to start looking at the Democrats and go, okay, why are you not opening it yet? What are you doing to stop this? Especially as Republicans' messaging has started to hone in on the fact that, yes, we do control both chambers of Congress, and yes, we do control the White House, but there's this special little rule called the filibuster that is making it impossible for us to open. And you know who's really helping with that is John Fetterman, which is shocking because he's a Democrat. But John Fetterman going out all the time and saying, my party is holding the country hostage, my party is refusing to open the government back up again, has given Republicans, a leg to stand on, a little boost for them to stand up a little bit higher and go, he's right. And this is, these are the great Democrats that have come along with us. I can't remember who it was. I believe it was Scott Bessent said this. They were trying to get him in a catch-all on MSNBC, saying Republicans control both chambers and the White House and all these things. And he was like, hold on 1 second. Then explain why moderate Democrats are coming over and voting for this bill to reopen the government. Why are you ignoring that fact? If it's just Republicans keeping it done, why don't we have more Democrats coming over and saying, okay, we'll open it? Well, it's because Democrats are holding it hostage. I think the American people see that. And when you talk about tariffs earlier and all the good that they did, The only reason why WIC got money this month, and the only reason why military members got paid, is because of Trump's positive influence on the tariff situation and forcing other countries to come to the table and pay America what they're worth. And that should be something that Democrats should support, because they're all about ensuring that people get paid what they're worth, you know, the income inequality and all of these things that they like to throw out as a cudgel against the right. When Trump is saying, okay, fine, I'll do that. I'll make sure that Americans get paid what they are worth. And they're going, wait, no, hold on. I didn't mean like actual Americans. I meant, you know, the people that we like. So I think it's really funny. But at the same time, I think that at the end of the day, if Republicans continue on the messaging to talk about the filibuster, explain it to the American people who are not aware of what is happening, I think the polling will continue to shift their way. And moderate Democrats, like the two senators in Virginia, Warnock and Ossoff, like they're going to have to come to the table and vote for them, because the primaries are coming up and the general election is coming up, and it's going to be there a lot faster. And when voters look at them and go, you kept the government shut down, I didn't get SNAP benefits, I didn't get WIC, my Medicare ran out, all of these things are happening all at the same time, I think they're going to get hit by it.
I see a lot of political ads with a lot of these people who are up for re-election, and that being held over them. Mary, you're right. John Fetterman has voted to reopen the government every single time. And you're right, the two Georgia senators, John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, have also voted. They've come over. And I think there will probably be more Democrats who realize how bad this is ultimately going to be for them if they let this keep going. Because, listen, Liz, you have already seen the average American, like for the federal workers, the people who are waiting for paychecks, that is horrible enough. Our military, by the way, Eric and I and our entire family have United States Secret Service agents who work with us every day. I don't even know the last time any of these people got paid. TSA agents. And let's talk about flying in the United States of America. You had the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, come out and talk today about this being a very big problem when you don't have all of the right people in place in order to have our aviation go off without a hitch. Whenever you cannot assure people that they're going to be safe flying, whenever you don't have enough people to work, in terms of, what do they call it, the air traffic controllers, you can't fly the planes, Liz. So this already happened to me last week. I got about an hour and a half delay at Washington's Reagan Airport because we got on the plane and the pilot came on and basically said, guys, there aren't enough air traffic controllers in the path that we're going to fly, so they've rerouted us and we don't have essentially enough gas to make it to where we're going to go. It would take us an extra hour to fly there. They're trying to reroute us. It happened last week. I have to fly tomorrow to Washington, D.C. And guess what? The flights that I took last week that are always there are not there anymore, Liz. It's already started to happen whenever the American people can't get where they're going for, say, Thanksgiving coming up potentially, for all of these holidays we have coming up. That's going to start to make people wake up and pay even more attention if they aren't already, Liz.
No, 100%. I think, or I hope everything obviously is fixed before Thanksgiving. That would be a disaster. But I hope people realize, people keep talking, or Democrats keep talking about how, they have to educate people on what's going on. Republicans try to do the same thing. I think the American people know exactly what's going on. We were told before the election last year that Kamala Harris was going to win, and then every American that you and I spoke to when we traveled across the country had a different approach. I say don't underestimate Americans. I think they know exactly what's happening. They know what Democrats, like Mary pointed out, want to fight for their base. They believe that this is going to do it. The far left radical group that's left in the Democrat Party is going to celebrate the fact that they're taking on Donald Trump, but those actual Americans that have to go to work every day don't care who's taking on Donald Trump or not. They care that they're getting paid and that the country is functioning, and I expect that Democrats are just going to continue down this horrible path that makes them lose election after election after election, and voters in states across the country. It's not going to be good for them in the midterms. And again, I don't celebrate when people are suffering. I want the government to reopen, but Democrats seem to be excited thinking about what benefits are taken away or who's not getting paid, because they can send another email to their radical base and blame Donald Trump. But that's the last thing you should be doing as an elected official, who, by the way, is still getting paid right now.
Isn't that shocking? It's really crazy to me. they should also be going without a paycheck. If you're keeping the American people hostage, essentially, and forcing these people, so many workers, people have to go to work. You got to keep our country moving forward. But they made a calculated play, Mary, that this was a good idea politically for them from the beginning. They thought, you know what, this will help us out in the midterms because we can blame Republicans. And now I think people are starting to see this is not going to work out for them. When this is what they're doing, when they're focused on, I don't know, like the ballroom being built at the White House and trying to make that like the big deal of the day, it just doesn't play for the American people. And you're right, Liz, when you say that the people are starting to get it, because I think the American people have lost basically full trust in the legacy media. One of those outlets being the Associated Press. And it's because they do dumb stuff like this. The Associated Press apparently wrote a story about pregnancy, but instead of using women in the story, Mary, because that's who can get pregnant, I hate to remind everybody out there, only women can have babies, no matter what you call yourself. They went ahead and used the term pregnant people 5 times in a story, despite the publication updating its style guidelines to they had to re-include the term pregnant women, Mary. They went ahead and used pregnant people, and the only time the word woman or women was used in this entire article to talk about pregnancy was via quotes, direct quotes from these researchers who they quoted in the article. It's absolutely amazing to me that this is what the Associated Press is doing. But don't forget, they also refused to call it the Gulf of America, which the president renamed earlier this year. And that's why they are barred from all major White House press events as a result. So maybe they didn't get the memo that the American people are tired of this crap, Mary. This is just outrageous to me.
It's not just outrageous, it's insulting.
Yeah.
Like, if you are a mother and you have had children and you have had to go through pregnancy and then childbirth and then raising that child, to be demoted to pregnant people as opposed to being a pregnant woman, where we are the only part of our species that can do this. Like, men cannot do it. We are not putting wombs inside of men and allowing them to be able to give birth. It's a biological impossibility. The fact that the erasure of women has become such a big part of the left is just so shocking, considering the fact that when I was growing up, I was told reliably that the right was the group that were trying to erase women, and the right were the ones that were trying to take away our rights. But what about our right to be called what we are? Yeah. We have, according to them, we have the right to kill our children. We have the right to take any position, whether we're qualified for it or not. Just because we are a woman, we should be looked at first. We should be listened to first. We should stand up first. But what we are not allowed to do is be called a woman, a mother, or any of these other things. And I was looking at this polling, it just or not polling, but this study that I believe it was David Weigel wrote about in recently for, I think, The Spectator, and he was talking about the shift of the Democratic Party, which I think that you can lump in all legacy media into that. I call them the propaganda media because that's what they do. They're just the propaganda arm for the left. And the shift in it, whereas in the last 10, 15 years, the number of times that they've talked about race inequality jumped 800 and something %. But the amount of times that they talked about husbands, fathers, men dropped over 100%. There's the only time they talk about men is when they're talking about quote unquote trans men, or if they're talking about men kind of sitting back and taking a backseat to minorities and that sort of thing. So the AP doing that, the AP refusing to look at biological reality, is just another example of how they've lost America's trust. Because when regular Americans who are struggling to feed their family read some ridiculous piece like that, they look at them and they go, okay, so your piece on tariffs telling me that they were bad, that must also be wrong. And your piece on Trump's trade deals with this country, or the peace deal that he's created with this country, they all must be wrong. And now the government shutdown, it's like they're losing their credibility, and the American people are tuning them out and turning into people like the Daily Caller, the Daily Wire, the Blaze, and looking at us to kind of be the harbingers of truth now, which is great, because that's what we've been trying to do for the last 10 years, is tell the American people exactly what's going on.
It's so crazy, Liz, to me. Remember whenever I don't know who it was, they were calling us, definitely Democrats, birthing people, not mothers. Remember that whole thing? I love that this White House is standing up and saying, like, no, you know what? If you guys can't actually call it the Gulf of America, which is legally the name of that body of water, President Trump signed an executive order. I was on the plane with him when he signed it, and we were flying over the Gulf of America while it happened. If you can't be real about things and be honest about things, then you're not welcome in the White House press briefings anymore. You're not welcome to participate in the same way maybe you otherwise would have been. I think, Mary, I agree with you. I think it is insulting. I am not a birthing person. I am a mother, and it is the most important, hardest earned title I will ever have in my life. But I'm just so curious, Liz, what happened to the Associated Press? At one time, this was sort of like the pinnacle. They were sort of looked at as really, if you wanted the truth, you wanted to really get something, like really pinpoint, a matter and find the truth about something, you would go to the Associated Press. Oh, let's see what the AP says. What happened to them? Where'd they go?
I mean, what happened to anyone, right? I think Donald Trump ran for office in 2015 and the entire world stopped functioning. I don't even know. There's that quote that's like, if you're too open-minded, your brains will fall out. That's basically what has happened since 2015. Everyone wants to be the good guy, celebrate all their victimhood, and just believe that men can get pregnant. I think there was a step further. It wasn't just birthing people. It was also chest feeding. Because men were trying to feed the I don't even know. But yeah, they don't really know what's going on. And again, they don't deserve to be in the Oval Office or in the briefing room or have any access to the White House. They also don't deserve to have the trust of the American people. And I would expect that that's why they're losing the trust of the American people. Like Mary said, you can't publish an article claiming that women aren't the only ones that can have babies and then really expect anyone to take you seriously on any single matter, whether it's foreign policy or anything else. And it's sad because people are suffering in our country and around the world. There's American bodies, by the way, two dead Americans still held hostage by Hamas. There's homeless veterans in our country. People are trying to pay their bills. The government is shut down, and we're worried about making sure that people know that men can also have babies. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But again, it's why Donald Trump won the election, and it's probably why Republicans will continue to win the next few elections.
Well, I hope people are really honed in on this stuff, and I hope you're right. I hope Republicans continue to win, but I would love to get both of you, get a take from both of you on what you see happening in some of these upcoming elections. Next Tuesday, we have the New York City mayor's election, and Mary, this is one of those that just terrifies a lot of us. Liz grew up in New York City. I lived in New York City for like 16, 17 years. Both of my kids were born there. That is the city that made Donald Trump who he is, where my husband grew up. And now we are facing what is probably, most people are predicting, to be a socialist with communist views taking over as mayor of New York City. So, Mary, give me your prediction for next Tuesday in New York. Where do you think things go?
I feel like I should tell the both of y'all to just close your ears because it's not going to be easy. I think Mamdani is inevitable. As you know, as much as we see him as this clownish figure and like wonder how can anyone take him seriously, how can anyone vote for him or like want his hatred to kind of be pushed forward, I think you look at the people that are going to vote for him, the same ones that say that they approve of violence against their political enemies, that believe in, inequality of wealth and all of these things. I think that you look at them and you go, okay, well, now it really makes sense. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of New York comprises of those types of voters, and I think that it would take an absolute miracle for him not to win. I was talking about this in my editorial meeting this morning, and we were discussing his possibility because there was a poll that came out showing them way behind, and I think that was probably an outlier rather than it being reality, because I think that the reality is that much like there were voters that would crawl over broken glass to have voted for Donald Trump in 2024, there is that same fervor and support from his radical left base that are going to do the same exact thing for him in NYC. I think that you don't want anyone to suffer. You especially don't want NYC to suffer, because it's the welcoming mat for America. You come in through New York. If you are an immigrant, we talk about Ellis Island. We talk about all these great neighborhoods and communities that have popped up in New York that kind of proved that point for us over the last 100 years. And so you don't want the face of America to be controlled by a socialist slop where, it's just devastation and despair everywhere. However, much like the 4 years into Joe Biden, where Trump's support only grew, I think a positive that we can take away from this is that once you see, and we saw this back in the 80s when New York City went into complete disarray and then Mayor Giuliani came in and fixed it all, I think that we will see hopefully a resurgence like that after Mamdani when everything falls apart. It's just unfortunate that a city like New York is going to go down the Mamdani way.
I kind of feel,
ladies.
First of all, I agree with you. I kind of feel like California is there a little bit. I feel like California, the people in California are like, enough. We got fires, we got, dry, dams
Nothing
and rivers. We got nothing.
No.
We got a budget cut for our fire department. We got, gas prices through the roof. People in California, I think, are done. I keep saying I think California is going to have a Republican as their next governor. Liz, let me get your take on the New York City mayor's race. A lot of people were suggesting that Curtis Sliwa should drop out and everybody should pool their support behind Andrew Cuomo. Now, I don't necessarily know that would have worked out. I also would say Cuomo lost the Democrat primary to Mamdani. And as much as I don't want to see Mamdani take over, he lost that primary. So if anyone should have dropped out, maybe it should have been Cuomo. He came back in, ran as an independent, and then, of course, siphoned off some votes from Mamdani, not enough, siphoned off some votes from Sliwa. Do you think that would have made a difference if one of those two guys dropped out? What's your take on the whole New York City situation? And do you agree? Do you think it's Mamdani's overall? He's going to be the winner next Tuesday.
I do agree. I think Mamdani is the next mayor of New York. I don't know if as a Jewish white woman I'll be allowed back in New York ever again. But I don't know. Look, I think if Curtis would have dropped or drops now, there could be a tiny difference. At the same time, it's hard because I've worked in this field and I want to see people who deserve to win actually win. And Cuomo has run a horrible campaign. Like you said, he lost the Democrat primary. The American people, or the New Yorkers, the American people of New York chose, they don't want him, right? They looked him in the eye and said, we don't want you. We know what your leadership brings, and it has been horrible for us, and we prefer Mamdani. And Mamdani, by the way, has run a brilliant race. I disagree with him on every single thing that he has ever said, but he is out there. He talks to everybody. He's young. He's energetic. He decided he was going to put forward solutions that people were going to support. And though I disagree with all those people, it has worked. And if you deserve to win an election in America, you should win that election fair and square. And I worry about what it means at the same time. If that's what people want, I want everyone to have the right to vote and the right to believe in whatever they believe in. And I just hope, like Mary said, that after 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, people realize we desperately needed Donald Trump. So maybe after 4 years of a literal communist who hates America, we realize that we messed up. I don't really know. I think it'll be good for Republicans in the midterms. I do, because, this is really the face of Democrats. They are unable to fill an arena without a socialist on the stage. Like, that's just what the party is. So I hope people realize what the party's become. But I am very sad for New York, for New York City, and for what was going to happen over the next few years.
And I was just thinking 1 year ago yesterday was that epic Madison Square Garden rally that President Trump had. And Liz, you were there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you were there. Mary, did you go to that?
No, but I was watching it.
It was so epic. I was just, first of all, that's once we came out of MSG there with the filled to the rafters crowd of people, I was like, Donald Trump is absolutely winning this race. There's no doubt about it. But it gave me a little bit of hope for New York City. Unfortunately, I think it is Mamdani, and I think that it's going to be a tough road ahead for New York. I think a lot of people were hopeful that New York could come back. My gosh, after the past two, mayors there, Eric Adams was definitely in over his head. And then, before him, are you kidding me? It's been bad after bad after bad. And I think a lot of people would hope New York would come back. Maybe it takes hitting rock bottom, and maybe it will be under Mamdani's reign, but we will see. Here's some good news, though, and I want to end on a high here, and I'm going to get both of your take on this. We do have a governor's race in the state of New Jersey, right next door to New York City, right across the river there, the Hudson River, and it's been a very interesting race to follow. It is Cheddarelli versus Cheryl. And Cheddarelli is the Republican, and he ran for governor previously, but he was running against an incumbent. He had a tough race. Polling has continued, Mary, to kind of trend in his direction. And I go back to the 2024 presidential election and look at the numbers for New Jersey. New Jersey moved solid. I mean, every state in America became redder, right? New Jersey, we actually picked up like 5 points in New Jersey for President Trump this past election cycle. That is a good indicator, and that's a good omen, really, for Jack Cheddarelli heading into next Tuesday. I don't know. You've seen a Republican become governor of the state of New Jersey before. Maybe we should put Republican in air quotes. But what do you make of that race, and what do you see happening there?
Okay, so I think this one is going to be different than the NYC mayoral race because, like you said, 2024, it gave us a glimpse of what could be. And I know that we've talked about this last time, but I remember watching that race that night and telling my husband, listen, watch New Jersey. I'm not saying it's going to go red, but it might be one of those shockers that like actually flips red because I was, listening to people on the ground. I was talking to people, and there was so much enthusiasm for Trump in New Jersey that wasn't there in 2020 and wasn't there in 2016. And it had been growing. And I think that with this race, I think the problem with Cheryl is that she is connected to the Biden, Kamala Harris, just inability to get the proper work done, inability to govern properly, to handle normal situations and be there without floundering. I think that Jack's done a really great job of connecting her to that and reminding voters, don't forget this is what it was like when Kamala Harris was running. This is what it was like under the Biden years. You don't want another Democrat there. I think that him doing that and running that kind of race was really smart because people are still a bit gun shy when it comes to Democrats. And so to have someone running your state in that way, I think that we're going to end up seeing him win this time. And I think that New Jersey is going to end up going red. I could be wrong. I do think the race is going to be close. I don't think that it's going to be a blowout. But I think that he's going to squeak by and he's going to win and he's going to deserve it. Like Liz said earlier, if you run a race well, you deserve to win. And I think that he's done a great race and I think that he's going to end up winning.
He's also a nice guy. I got to interview him, and he's a nice guy. He wants to do it for the right reasons. His campaign manager is his daughter. It was just it's solid. Like he's a solid guy, and he loves the state of New Jersey. And you're right. I kept looking at New Jersey. I kept looking at Virginia, Mary, during the last presidential election because those were two states that I saw right on the edge. They're still right on the edge because, look, go back to 2016. No one had Michigan on the flipping red column because Michigan hadn't voted for a Republican as president since 1988. Yet in 2016, guess what? Michigan turned red for Donald Trump, and that was, people were kind of blown away. Nobody saw that one coming. So I was watching New Jersey as well. Liz, I think that this is more of what I see out there in America. I see New York City is an anomaly, right? You get all the freaks, you get all the weirdos there in New York. Like we know what's going on in New York. But New Jersey is a bit more like the rest of America, and I think the American people are starting to get it, and I think they're kind of done with the woke nonsense. They're done with the kind of crap that just doesn't matter anymore. They want people who are focused on putting America first, putting family first, making their lives easier. Where do you see the New Jersey race going next Tuesday, Liz?
I'm hopeful. I'm not as optimistic. I'm very hopeful. I think the last time he ran, he got incredibly close to Cheddarelli. I think it was closer than most of the polling showed, which is a great sign. President Trump always does better than polling shows. Republicans generally do, especially the last 5-10 years. So I'm very hopeful. It's extremely close right now. His opponent is also atrocious, and it's a very different race than running against an incumbent. She does not seem to know how to answer any question, and I don't think stacks up against him just because he does seem like a very decent, down-to-earth guy who kind of like an old school politician just kind of loves the state that he's running to represent. So I'm very hopeful. I'm not going to get too optimistic, but I'm hopeful, and the polling does look very, very good, especially considering how many people are still scared to admit they're voting Republican. But it looks very good, and it would make sense because New Jersey is one of those states that has been trending in that direction for quite some time.
Yeah, and I hope that trend, let's keep that going. Let's keep it going through the midterms. Let's keep it going through the 2028 presidential election. How cool would it be, ladies? You've seen the map where it's just like red. The whole thing is red. Like I'm down for that. Let's take that. I mean, I don't know that New York's ever going to flip red, but I'll tell you what, the New York's almost elected Lee Zeldin. You know what I mean? As governor, we came very close to that in New York. There have been some trends that I really like to see going on all across this country. So fingers crossed, if you live in New York City, get out and vote, and make sure you're not casting a vote for Zohran Madani, because we don't want a socialist in charge of New York City. If you live in New Jersey, you know what you need to do. I think it's pretty obvious who should be winning that race. So Liz and Mary, thank you both as always for being here on The Right View. To everybody at home, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow, and we'll see you back here next time for more.